Hi everyone, my name is Eli Thompson of Tensegra Teach, Dynamic Teaching Tools.
Is it okay?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. Hi guys.
I have two tetrahedrons here that are intended to show a certain property of tensegrity and what it might imply about the body. So this is the standard Tensegra Teach model. It's a nice little model, about 1 foot in circumference, diameter, and it works quite well to illustrate tensegrity and its properties. It's quite dynamic and resilient. This other model here is a solid state tensegrity I created as an experiment. It's a little bit bigger. It's made of dowels, of course, and then these metal struts that are from bicycle wheel spokes, and so they are not elastic at all. They're solid. They are organized in a slightly loose fashion around a screw at the end. And so there is some movement in the structure, and yet it is a solid structure in that it has no elasticity in it, which is a hallmark of tensegrity.
Uwaga na krowę. Faster.
These two models have different properties that are interesting. A standard tensegrity model with the elasticity of the bands represents the expansion in all three dimensions and contraction in all three dimensions quite well.
Daj mi miejsce teraz, chciałem wjechać motorkiem tam. Go there.
It's distributing the strain evenly throughout, and as you expand the struts, if you focus on the vertical struts, as I expand, you'll see the vertical struts widen as well, and as I contract, the vertical struts narrow back and forth. You know? And the same is happening with these. So the model as a whole is expanding as I pull it apart, and it contracts as a whole in all three dimensions as I compress it. However, you'll notice that as I expand and contract in the full range, I'm going all the way with these struts that I'm holding, and yet the vertical struts only expand and contract maybe an inch at most. A lot of that movement is being lost in the elasticity of the bands, and so a lot of the strain and the tension that I create in order to expand the structure is being absorbed by the bands and distributed throughout. There is a benefit to that in that the whole system is able to handle those strains more effectively. However, it's not transferring the forces as effectively because it's being absorbed by the bands. If we look at this solid, non-elastic tensegrity structure, the transference of force from the compression through the structure is almost 100%.
Okay, let's go.
Because none of it is lost in these solid metal spokes. So there's no elasticity here, and thus when I expand and contract, even though I cannot expand and contract as much, the transference of that to the whole structure is almost 100%. So it expands as much as I expand and contract it, almost. And so it's a much more effective expansion contraction in all three dimensions. However, I would say that as a human, I would much rather be elastic if there was a trauma or an accident, or if there's repeated forces, because I want my system to be able to adapt to it and absorb it more effectively. this is good for performance because it's able to transfer those forces with very little loss of force, and so it becomes a very efficient structure.
Now I take this lady.
But I don't think my system or a human system could handle much of this because the impacts would be so great. If you fall and you get hit here, the transference of strain through the whole structure is so sharp. As if you step off a curb without noticing it's there and you're not ready for it and that force runs through your body sharply, it would be the same thing. However, it does show that it suggests the idea that fascial fitness and an athlete performance requires a tighter, more cinched up fascial web with greater tone in the musculature and so less adaptability in that webbing. thus the forces for an athlete, a performance athlete, are not being absorbed into the myo, into the stretchability of that tissue, but rather transferring straight into the tone, the tautness of the fascial web, and transferring and being distributed through that system much more efficiently, and thus recoiled out more efficiently.
Now at the front of mesh.
However, for one who is in less peak performance, such as myself, those forces, the pounding of impact of running, etc., are being distributed into the soft tissue, that more elastic musculature, rather than the taut of the fascia. And thus, while it's absorbing it more efficiently, and I feel maybe, and I can handle maybe more of it, it's not as efficient, and I can't recoil it as efficiently. So, interesting observations from two different tetrahedral tensegrity models and what they might imply about the body. Enjoy.